Okay, so we're gonna talk about how Ned Stark ruined his whole career. I made a video about Robert Baratheon, how he ruined his whole career, and how he helped ruin Ned Stark's whole career, but this time we're gonna focus solely on good old Eddie Stark. The moment Ned accepted, or maybe he was a bit, well, he didn't accept by his own volition. He was a bit manipulated by Catelyn and Master Lewin to accept Robert's offer of him becoming the Hand of the King. So the moment he accepted to be Hand of the King was the very moment Ned Stark ruined his whole career. He went to King's Landing unprepared. He did not know how this place worked. He didn't know how vile some of the big players were. He thought that just because he is Hand of the King and just because he has a piece of paper with Robert's signature, he thought that this would give him complete and total authority, which it didn't. It didn't at all. Right? He refused Renly's offer of joining forces to, stop Cersei from putting Joffrey on the throne. He refused, and that it was a terrible, big mistake on his part. Renly had to flee because of this. See, Renly was smart. You can say whatever you want about Renly. He was smart. He was big brain. He got the fuck out of King's Landing. Uh, Ned, on the other hand, remained in King's Landing after Robert died, and he got played hard by Cersei, by Littlefinger, by the Royal Guard. He got imprisoned, and then he was executed, even though he had accepted to basically confess that he had been a traitor, which he wasn't. He wasn't a traitor, right? Ned Stark had a couple of opportunities to win the Game of Thrones, but he refused to take advantage and exploit those avenues because, well, his honor. We all know that Ned Stark is honorable. He is famous for it. And because of his honor, he got killed. And now some people might say that Ned Stark is a bit of a dummy. He should have obviously made some moves. But Ned Stark isn't dumb. He just couldn't, do all of those shady schemes like the others. He couldn't lower himself to such a vile position. And because of this, because he even in the end he didn't know with whom he messed with. Right? He didn't know. He should have known what Cersei would do. He should have known that Littlefinger would betray him. And so forth. There were a lot of machinations going around, and if he paid a little more attention, he could have figured something out. And I think his biggest mistake is that he, in part he trusted Littlefinger mainly because his wife Catelyn told him that Littlefinger was trustworthy, that Littlefinger was her childhood friend, and they were very close, and yada yada yada, right? Catelyn being ignorant as ever, right? And this is very frustrating to me because I've watched a couple of videos from Order of the Green Hand, and if you really reread A Game of Thrones, the moment when the letter from Lysa comes, right? and the way Catelyn behaves, and we see Ned's reactions to her, we can see that he is angry, that he is not amused, and basically, I believe that Ned Stark didn't really trust Caitlyn. That's the feeling that I get from their relationship, if you can call it that, right? On a superficial level, you might say that their marriage was, it was a compromise, but they had learned to work together and get along. But rereading how they interact, I mean, it's a curious thing, right? It seems like they're it seems like Caitlyn is scheming behind his back, manipulating him, and Ned kind of understands this, and he is not pleased. He doesn't like this, right? So he shouldn't have trusted Caitlyn's word when she said that Littlefinger is trustworthy, because obviously from the moment we meet this guy, obviously he is shady as fuck, right? He should have had more trusted allies at court. He should have had way more soldiers, right? He should have made allies from the first moment he came into King's Landing, etc., etc. But he didn't, because he was not a fan of this, right? He wasn't a political mastermind. He wasn't the type of guy that whispered with people scheming. He's not that guy. He says it. He says it bluntly. He was a soldier. He grew up with soldiers, right? He had learned to die a long time ago, right? And he was an expert on the battlefield, sword in hand, etc., as a leader. But in court, you know, he just wasn't good at playing the Game of Thrones, right? Because he did not know, he did not understand what kind of enemies he had there. He didn't understand that they would do anything and everything to stop him from, spreading the news that Cersei's children were, out of incest and all of that, right? And that's another problem. Should have he should have gone about exposing this, uh, you know, this truth in a different way. He just went and he told Cersei directly, "Listen, I'm gonna tell people you have until morning to take your children and get the fuck out of here." That was a big problem. That was a big mistake. He basically told Cersei what he would do. He told her that he knew the truth and that he would use it against her. Instead, he should have gathered trustworthy people and he should have told them, and they should have come up with a tactic to defeat her, right? But unfortunately, Ned, let's just say Ned was not experienced with the political hyenas at King's Landing. He was a soldier. He just didn't have the experience, you know? And that's basically it. This is how Ned Stark ruined his whole career. He was just too honorable. He was just too straightforward. He was too honest, maybe a bit too naive. He trusted the wrong people, including his wife. And because of all the mistakes he has made, because of his mistakes, all of his children, his entire family suffered in the aftermath of his execution, right? Arya had to flee. Sansa was a hostage. Robb had to become king in the north. He was young. He wasn't ready. There was a lot of pressure. He had to go into battle. He was like 15 years old, right? And so on, right? So unfortunately, let's just say it, Ned Stark just did not have the experience to uh, match the the wickedness of the people at court, right? He just was not prepared for the corruption and the evil, right? That's basically